In recent weeks, I've been shocked by the response of many people to the murder of Charlie Kirk. Many people on the left, who I'm sure regard themselves as perfectly decent people, have said the most awful things. If not openly excusing the murder, then, as they would have it, putting it in some context. Yes, it was terrible, but have you heard what Kirk's views were on X, Y, and Z? As someone who was once and for many years on the left, it's brought back two things. First, the distance between the views and values of the left and those of most ordinary Americans and Brits. And it also reminds me of the dark side of left politics, of the unhinged zealotry of the left, its blind self-righteousness, its intolerance of dissent, its desire to control us, what we say and hear and think. The left sees itself as waging a war against what it calls populism. Think of that for a moment. The left used to be on the side of the people, but now, for the left, populism is a dirty word. The left versus the people. Gosh, this has been given a name: the culture war. Fighting this war, on the one hand, we have the enlightened, university-educated elite, who tell us that the climate is in crisis and that society is riddled with unfairness and prejudice against women who have penises and so on. And the answer to all this unfairness and bad weather is more state power, higher taxes, digital IDs, the control of social media and the censorship of misinformation, a greater respect for and transfer of power to unelected international bureaucracies run by people like themselves, and of course, gun control. In short, a bigger, more powerful state run by them and their friends. On the other hand, we have the ignorant masses, the deplorables, who no longer believe the climate claptrap and remember fondly the days when women with penises were called men, and resent paying so much tax, and don't like being told what to say and think, and view the government as wasteful and parasitic, and would rather hold on to their guns, thank you very much. Is this a culture war, or is it something bigger? I've argued in the past several films that this is, in fact, a class war. It's a war that will determine the future of the West, and will define the kind of society we live in, the kind of America we want. A class war sounds bad, not to say a little Marxist. Who are these contending classes? Well, in the red corner we have the commercial and industrial middle class and working classes. People with proper jobs in the private economy. People who grow stuff and make stuff and sell stuff. Real people who believe you have to earn your living by producing some marketable service or product. Who believe in hard work, self-reliance, saving, and doing the right thing by your family and community. They believe in good humour, tolerance, and freedom. In short, old-fashioned American values. And in the blue corner, in Britain we'd say the red corner, but as a colour thing. Anyway, in the other corner, well, who are they? What or who is this class? What is the nature of the beast? In recent films, I've given this class a name. The new class. It's not a great name, but then I didn't come up with it. This is a class the Europeans call the intelligentsia. Oof. Americans hate that word, for good reason, as we shall see. The intelligentsia doesn't like capitalism because capitalism doesn't like them. It doesn't reward them with enough money or respect. Instead, this class is drawn to the state, to big government. The spectacular rise of state spending and state power in America and beyond has greatly increased the size of this class. It has given them grants and jobs in the public and third sectors, in the educational and research establishments. It represents a kind of social organisation they like, run by people like themselves. The new class yearns for a society which gives it money and control, and it has been hugely successful in creating one. The huge growth in government spending and control in the last 100 years has made the new class immensely powerful. Its power is direct and indirect, or one might say hard and soft. Its hard power comes from the increasing reach of the state. This power is such that even the mightiest capitalist enterprises have been reduced to twitching, fawning supplicants. Big capital has been driven into the arms of the new class, propelled both by fear and greed. Large corporations reason that if they are to be regulated, it would be best to try to shape that regulation, to minimize as far as possible its adverse effects, and, wherever possible, to use it to its advantage. And so it must seduce and flatter and make friends with the new class, and laugh at its jokes. After all, the right kind of regulation might make it harder for unwelcome foreign competitors to enter the market. Heavy regulation will also make it harder for smaller, upstart firms to threaten their established market dominance, since the burden of tiresome regulation falls heaviest, relatively, on smaller companies who can ill afford the compliance, auditing, HR and legal departments which the observance of complex rules requires, a bulky, largely unproductive shadow bureaucracy. On top of this is the appeal to big capital of getting its share of tax breaks, subsidies, public contracts and the like. The new class has at its disposal vast quantities of taxpayer cash, which it can hand out to well-behaved companies, and there are plenty of ways, regulatory and fiscal, of punishing large companies and industries that step out of line. And so big capital is bought off and becomes a craven, cynical, uneasy friend of the big state. This is why we find the senior managers of large, lazy corporations failing to challenge new class anti-capitalism, paying lip service to statist new class initiatives, openly kowtowing to new class prejudices, mindlessly regurgitating new class environmentalist claptrap. But even more insidious and extensive is the soft power of the new class. This stems from the new class's professed superiority of knowledge and expertise, and its influence on public discourse and on the intellectual framework of public debate. It is the new class that staffs our universities, and its viewpoint pervades every subject taught. Modern economics, Keynesianism, is entirely the creation of the new class, and to its very core reflects its worldview. It sees the world not from the perspective of a hungry street-fighting entrepreneur or an ordinary taxpayer, but from the perspective of a treasury official, as Keynes was, and government planner. In truth, real-life commercial entrepreneurs never need the services of a university-trained economist. Business people think about products and markets and marketing and sales and wage bills and profits, never aggregate demand. Keynesianism is the quasi-scientific justification for the new class's state control of the economy, and as such it enjoys a privileged position within universities and schools, effectively beyond criticism. No matter how absurd its propositions, no matter how obviously self-contradictory its ideas, no matter how many times it is shown by actual reality to be disastrously wrong, it persists as received wisdom, for the simple reason that it chimes completely with the interests of the new class. The new class worldview is woven into the very fabric of mainstream economics and its coverage in the media. Cuts refers to cuts in public spending, not cuts in taxes. Austerity is always the austerity experienced by the tax-consuming new class, angry about lower government spending. Austerity never refers to the austerity imposed on the unfortunate taxpayers who must pay for high government spending. It is from the new class intelligentsia that newspapers, magazines, radio stations and TV channels recruit their journalists, reporters, producers, presenters and editors, who in turn feed us deferential interviews with experts from the new class. It is from the ranks of the new class that we get our school teachers, university lecturers and professors, policy researchers and analysts, novelists, theatre and museum directors, book publishers, sociologists, and so on. They are the educators and the literati. As Hayek says, until one begins to list all the professions and activities which belong to this class, it's difficult to realize how numerous it is, how the scope of its activities constantly increases in modern society, and how dependent on it we have become. There is little that the ordinary man of today learns about events or ideas except through the medium of this class. It is the intellectuals, in this sense, who decide what views and opinions are to reach us, which facts are important enough to be told us, and in what form and from what angle they are to be presented. Politicians are never challenged by new class journalists for allowing the fantastic proliferation of the state and third sector. On the contrary, when the new class journalist confronts a politician demanding to know what they're doing about problems X, Y and Z, from juvenile delinquency and teen pregnancies to climate, the politician must respond defensively that they are on the case with more spending and the creation of yet another bullshit agency or service or review. It is the new class that provides us, through various channels, with their commentary on the world. It is through the lens of the new class that we are at every turn invited to understand and interpret the world. Taken together, there is an almost complete new class monopoly of cultural and intellectual life, largely inescapable and overwhelming. This even applies when members of the new class work for a privately owned concern. As Hayek observed, newspapers in capitalist ownership, universities presided over by reactionary governing bodies, broadcasting systems owned by conservative governments have all been known to influence public opinion in the direction of socialism, because this was the conviction of the personnel. The new class enjoys its monopoly of cultural and intellectual life and guards it with jealous fury. It is determined not to share its territory. The new class is breathtakingly intolerant within universities, in the media, the arts, and other heartland professions of the new class. The rare news outlets that defy new class orthodoxy are vilified by them, marginalized, and considered demonic. Activist groups threaten advertisers to boycott such channels. The editors of academic journals who publish papers that contradict new class orthodoxy on climate risk losing their jobs. University academics who dare to challenge the climate consensus are denied funding, have their papers rejected, are socially ostracized, and even hounded out of their profession. New class intolerance is the real basis of the consensus on global warming. Hollywood directors and actors can damage their careers if they step out of line. A tech entrepreneur is reviled if he dares to oppose new class dogma. Heads of companies can lose their jobs for a single ill-considered comment. It is a brave and exceptional politician who will dare to take on the new class. Politicians, after all, need the support of journalists. They need the votes of teachers and others in the new class public sector, and every day they are surrounded by and rely on new class public administrators. This is the soft power of the new class in operation. The new class does not need formal methods of censorship. The voices of dissent are so few and so muffled, excluded from the new class's intellectual cartel. And yet, for all that, the new class calls at every turn for direct censorship. The new class feels threatened by social media, which is worryingly out of its control, and so it goes to great lengths to force social media platforms to subtly, and not so subtly, guide and censor views expressed there. News which offends against new class dogma is fake news. Views of which the new class disapproves is considered harmful. Those who promote such views face being cancelled. Broadcasting watchdogs are urged to revoke the broadcasting licenses of offending news channels. The young members of the new class, in their anti-capitalist rallies, pose as anti-establishment. They're the rebels, they would have us believe. But the truth is, the new class is the establishment. They are the very people who run and staff the legions of omnifarious agencies, offices, commissions, programs, advisory bodies, boards, committees, directorates and councils. They run the arts and science funding bodies. They run the government schools. They run research institutes. They run the universities. They run the NGOs and quangos, quasi-NGOs, and the rest of the non-profit third sector. The new class runs the OECD, the WHO, the UN, the EU, the WEF. It dominates the mainstream media. The new class is the establishment. It's an irony of the utmost significance, rarely if ever observed, that in modern capitalism, the establishment is anti-capitalist. An anti-capitalist establishment? It's true. Why else do we imagine taxes are so high? Why is the state so enormous? Why is there so much regulation? Burnham, as early as 1941, argued, the democracy of capitalist society is on its way out. In fact, it's just about gone and will not come back. The new class enjoys power beyond democratic control because you can't vote the new class out of power. The intelligentsia, said Daniel Bell in 1973, exercises its influence not through the ballot box, but rather the bureaucratic and administrative labyrinth. In Britain, the Greens can manage to get only a single MP elected. As a political movement, they're staggeringly unpopular, and, understandably, their unpopularity is most extreme among working-class voters. And yet, despite the failure of the Greens at the ballot box, Green policies in Britain and across Europe reign supreme, across the entire political spectrum. No politician dares to cross them. The new class does not need democracy, and does not fear democracy. State policy can, in effect, only be changed by the new class functionaries who run the state. New policies will be discussed and considered and edited and reworked and altered by those new class apparatchiks whose job it is to judge and frame and write regulations. The new class are the keepers of public policy. They are the public realm, and their power comes from size. The public realm is now gigantic. It is a daunting political task to radically shrink it. Where is the politician who would dare to sack several million people? Even the likes of Thatcher and Reagan hardly made a dent. Their feeble blows against the new class counted for little. With supreme indifference, the new class carries on. Today, the new class is enormous. In the US and UK, more than twice as many people work in government as work in manufacturing. In France, government spending stands at a mind-boggling 60% of GDP. The sheer number of bullshit new class jobs that result from this is staggering. Never before in the whole of human history has such a vast proportion of mankind been occupied in such a futile, unproductive, parasitic manner. The holder of every bullshit public sector new class job, every sustainability assessment coordinator and regional inclusion officer has a car and a house and a TV and food and clothes and holidays. Every member of the productive economy is struggling to support not only themselves, but one or two of these bullshit others. The dead weight of new class parasitism has had a devastating effect on growth and prosperity, and the effect is compounded. Year after year, how much more rich would we have been? How much more thrilling would life have been had it not been for this miserable mountain of new class bullshit weighing us down and obstructing our path? The very existence of the new class has stifled and retarded economic growth. The high level of tax needed to maintain it has reduced profits, wages, and levels of productive employment, suffocating economic activity. The new class's incontinent government spending has wasted taxpayers' hard-earned money and landed us with ruinously large public debts. Its monopoly and debasement of currency has held down wages, undermined the culture of saving, increased indebtedness, encouraged reckless speculation, and destabilized markets. Its environmentalist policies are in the process of decimating the industrial manufacturing economy. Its expansion of welfare has undermined the independence, resilience, spirit, and social coherence of vast swathes of the population, destroying families and poisoning communities. The new class regulatory state, which demands obedience and compliance, has eaten away at the instincts and ideals of individual responsibility and individual freedom. It has sapped the dynamism of people, reducing too many of us to docile servility and conformity. The new class is modelling for us a world that is ever more stultifying and limited, less free, less exciting, and less human. De Tocqueville described the stupefying effect of smothering and all-encompassing state regulation on the spirit and mentality of those subjected to it. He said, "The sovereign power extends its arms over the entire society. It covers the surface of society with a network of small, complicated, minute, and uniform rules which the most original minds and the most vigorous souls cannot break through. It does not break wills, but it softens them, bends them, and directs them. It rarely forces action, but it constantly opposes your acting. It does not destroy, it prevents. It does not tyrannize, it hinders. It represses, it enervates. It extinguishes, it stupefies. And finally it reduces each nation to being nothing more than a flock of timid and industrious animals, of which the government is the shepherd." The most exciting development in recent times is that many ordinary people appear to be waking up. There is no doubt that Western society is out of sorts. Many ordinary citizens feel alienated from and animosity towards the political and cultural establishment. On a whole range of issues, a gulf exists between the progressive views of the university-educated elite and those of the grumbling, conservative, unenlightened masses. To academics and progressive commentators, this is a sad reflection of the poor intelligence and morals of the lower orders, the narrow self-interest of the vulgar commercial middle class, and the extraordinary ability of political Svengalis like Donald Trump to dupe and deceive the workers. The ideological fissure between the enlightened elite and the backward masses has been called, nebulously, a culture war. But the term is too trivial. It is a full-blown class war. We don't realize it yet, we haven't understood it properly. We haven't grasped its enormous historic significance, because one of the belligerents in that war has managed, by magic, to stay hidden. In this war, there is no point reasoning with the new class to try to win them over. The historic task of defeating the new class falls to the very classes who do not turn up to their climate rallies, the working and commercial middle classes. They, many of them, are growing increasingly conscious of this class conflict. They are, after all, at the butt end of so many new class policies. But resentment of and animosity towards the new class is not enough. Overturning the dominance of the new class is a huge task. The nature of the battle must be spelled out. The need to fight must be underlined. The reasons for waging war explained and distilled into memorable slogans. Most of all, the enemy needs to be clearly identified. Our failure to do so has allowed the new class to grow and to escape responsibility for the chaos and misery it has caused. The first step must be to pronounce and advertise loudly and repeatedly that the new class exists. The immense power of the new class, as we have seen, lies in its anonymity, in the fiction that its members are neutral and disinterested experts, well-meaning concerned scientists, high-minded intellectuals, impartial planners and regulators, rationally ordering us and our world in our best interests. This sham neutrality must be exposed, the selfish motives called out. This invisible class must be made visible. This anonymous class must be given a name. I'm Martin Durkin. This is Guerrilla Science.